Hey buddies, Flak here, coming back to another Borderlands 3 video. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. Today I want to discuss all the anointments that are in the game that are just absolutely useless or serves no purpose in the current meta, or just are simply not good enough to be played in the current meta. But before we get into it, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. We are 40 subscribers away to 1,000. I cannot believe it. Thank you so much, and let's get into it. Now this video is a continuation on our Crazy Earl reroll anointment video. There we discussed the chance of getting the specific desired anointment with the reroll machine and how many times it takes for you to do. There's going to be a link up there for those of you interested on that video, but the amount of tries it takes you to get one anointment that you want is pretty surprising. You're going to be really surprised if you watch that video. But let's go into an anointment list. So right here I have a list of all the anointments in the game, and first we're going to start off with Amara because alphabetical reasons. And the first skill right off the bat is on action skill and deal 40% bonus radiation damage for a short time. Now if anybody's played Amara knows that this isn't a anointment you see in a regular build, and right off the bat you kind of look at it and you're like, 40% bonus radiation damage? Why can't I just use a generic 50% bonus radiation damage or any element damage in general compared to this? This is just a downgrade to the normal generic action skill N that we see in every single build, so that is just absolutely terrible. There's no reason for this to be in the game anymore. I could see maybe... No, even in the beginning, when the game was released, it was crap, so I don't know why they have it in the game. Maybe if they were to buff it, like, I don't know, by 110%, make it like something reasonable to use for certain builds, but it's just not very good at all. Now before we go into the next one, I want to say that there's like a series of these particular anointments that I feel like are all great in their own sense. Like it varies your build potential very, very well, but in certain cases like Amara, they're not very good. And the first one I want to bring up is astral protection damage is increased by 100%. It just makes a particular action skill deal 2 times the damage, and that is great in a sense, but I can't think of any build that would want to run that besides very niche non-meta builds. There are some cases where this type of anointment, where action skill damage is increased by 2 times with certain skills with the characters, are really good, but most of the time they just don't hold a candle to any of the other things because you most of the time want to be optimizing gun damage. So this personally I feel has no place in the game at the moment, and I shouldn't say it doesn't deserve to be in the game because there should be one of these for each action skill, and I think that's fine, but I feel like Gearbox should at least buff it to give you an incentive to try to build around it, like maybe 300%. I know that's a crazy number, but I don't know, it would give people an incentive to at least try a build with Amara that uses astral projection for actual projection damage, because most of the time you're just using it to proc action skill N. But at least that anointment is actually pretty decent as opposed to the next one, which is status effect chances increased by 50% for a short time. There's no reason to ever have that. I can't think of a single reason to have that in any certain build. Most of the time you can proc any dot you want on most enemies with no problem, so that's just a garbage ability compared to the other phase grasp abilities that you could just use with Amara. Which is funny, actually on the next list is actually a perfect example, and I didn't mean to say phase grasp, I meant to say phase cast. But weapon damage is increased by 250% for a short time. That's an amazing, like if you compare that to the last anointment, it just makes you feel like, what were they thinking adding a status effect chance increase to Amara? Or I feel like status effect chance increase is just garbage in general. I feel like that's absolutely trash. There's no reason for it to be in the game at the moment. Now I could discuss about the next 3 being decent, but I don't feel like I need to explain very, very much why these 2 are very decent. But let's explain why I feel like the orb damage should not be buffed. Is a great anointment in general, because I have many builds where orb does tons and tons of damage, especially this one particular build. I should be playing a B footage right here in the background. It deals crazy amounts of damage. It deals like billions of damage very, very easily, and it's all thanks to this anointment. So I feel like this is an example of why this generic anointment should be kept in the game, but certain other ones like astral projection damage should be increased, like buffed. Like I feel like orb is in a great place for the 2 times damage, but astral projection should maybe get like a 3 times increase or something like that. Next is 2 times damage for phase slam. Phase slam is never used for the damage itself, so I feel like once again, since it's an action skill oriented anointment, it should be kept in the game. It gives you some build variation, but I feel like it should be majorly buffed. I don't know what the number should be buffed to, but it definitely should be in the game, and Gearbox, please buff that. It'd be very, very useful. Once again, next anointment should just be buffed while grasp is active. Weapon damage is increased by 100%. I feel like that's really good. but in most cases you probably would want to just use the phase cast weapon increased damage as opposed to the phase grasp active. So maybe just buffed. I feel like that's cool to have in the game. The next two are just utter trash. While phase grasp is active, constantly trigger novas. For some reason the game has a ton of these constantly trigger novas anointments. I feel like that's such a cool idea, but the novas never proc quick enough for it to be useful in any build or even deal enough damage. So I feel like that should be kept in the game if they were to buff it. Like, you know what? No, it shouldn't be kept in the game. I feel like that should just be removed. Novas on shields are never really that good unless you're using Frozen Heart or Frozen Snowshoe. I feel like that should just be removed. The next one, while Phase Grasp is active, weapon charge is decreased by 71%. That's just... And then fire rate increase is decent, but that's just so trash to just be thrown out the window immediately. Next on our list is going to be Flak. After going through all these anointments for Flak, I feel bad for Flak mains. I feel like most of the time when I play Flak, it's for rack attack builds because I love Peregrine builds. But a lot of these anointments are pretty bad. I mean, unless you can correct me in the comments or something, but all these anointments for the most part are pretty crap except for the ones you normally see on a build. Like the first one, after using rack attack, gain 50% critical hit damage. That's not very good. I could see that being used in like certain builds, but I could see how that could be useful because the damage formula multipliers for crit damage is pretty cool. But most of the time for a crit damage build, you don't want to be using rack attacks, so that's just utter trash. It should just be removed from the game or changed to fade away or something. Next one on the list is actually pretty decent. Essentially just gives slag to enemies, and people who haven't played Borderlands 2, slag just means increased damage for a short time, and the rack attacks just allow you to deal 2 times more damage against those enemies, so that's a very good skill. But then we move on to the next one, which is grant an extra charge of rack attack. I remember when I first started the game thinking this was amazing, but now that I'm at endgame and like meta based, this is a trash anointment and should just be removed from the game. It's not good at all. And then once again we have a create a nova when exiting fade away. One nova, not even constantly, maybe like constantly during fade away, just one nova at the end of fade away. That's just utter trash. I don't feel like that's very, very useful at all. While fade away is active, weapon damage is increased by 100%. This boggles me that it's still in the game actually, because we have a generic anointment that is action skill active, increased damage by 2 times. Now I know that can sometimes have the weapon swap glitch, but if you think about it, character specific anointments should just be better than generic ones. I feel like if you have to use it on a particular character and it meets a certain criteria, it should be insane amount of damage. This only 2 times damage is utter trash. I feel like that is just no reason to be in the game. And let's skip the 2 decent ones here. You know, actually, let's talk about the gravity snare. I feel like gravity snare is such a cool action skill, but it's never used in any single build. And weapon damage increased by 2 times while gravity snare is active is decent. But once again, like the fade away thing, these need to be buffed or just removed from the game entirely, because there's no reason to have this in the game if you already have a generic anointment that can do the job better than this. There's no reason to have character specific anointments if there's a generic anointment that can do better. It's utter trash. Once again, feel so bad for Flak mains. The next 3 are just terrible. Oh shit. After using attack command, gain 30% lifesteal. This is such a bait anointment for Flak mains. I love looking at this anointment and thinking, oh, this has to be amazing because 30% lifesteal is great. But this lifesteal only applies to your pet. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's so bad. Just remove it from the game. There's no reason for it to be there. And then after issuing an attack command, gain 8% movement speed. Wow, 8%, that's amazing. Remove that shit. While fade away is active, gain accuracy and handling. No, in most meta builds, you want to be increasing your damage. This accuracy and handling is no place in the meta. Just get that out of there. But then, after you look at all this, and like at all I said, all the things that should be removed or buffed, there's only 2 character-specific anointments for Flak that are good. That's ridiculous. Why is that still a thing? The game has been released for 2 years. It shouldn't be like this. I don't know why I'm getting so passionate. I'm not even that big of a Flak main, but it's ridiculous. It hurts my heart for you guys that this rack attack anointment that is niche in general, it's one of the better ones out of all of these, and then while Gamma Burst, you know, that's been a staple in a lot of radiation builds. 2 anointments in the entire pool for Flak are good. That's ridiculous. I think that's so dumb. And then move on to Zane. And Zane has a similar experience to how Flak has it, where there's only like maybe like 4 or 5, maybe 6 anointments that are actually good in his pool. The first 4, like the first one after swapping places with your Digiclone, damage increased by 100% for a short time. That's cool. Once again, generic anointment does this better. No reason to have it. It's just so dumb. It just needs a buff and it'll be so much better. Like 300%. I know that's a crazy amount. Maybe they don't have to do that. Like 250%. At least give an incentive to use this anointment, because there's no point at the moment to even use this. And then Mantis Shoulder Cannon. Damage increase 100%, you know, 2 times more damage with an action skill. You know, every single character has that. I feel like that should just be buffed. Or, you know what? All of these action skill 2 times damage should just be categorized into one anointment, generic anointment. That is, so we can remove all those from the pool so you can have a better chance of getting what you want on the Crazy Earl's reroll. It should just be one anointment that says action skill damage increased by 2 times, or at the very least 3 times to make some of these decent. I know that would buff certain builds to crazy amount, but some of these don't just need a 2 times increase. They need like a 3 times increase to be good, because Mantis Shoulder Cannon damage by 2 times is not good enough at all. And then we have barrier anointments, most of the time pretty comical. Barrier anointments are give or take not what you want to use for the most part. Like the first one, status effect chances increased by 50%, just utter trash. The next one I feel like could be decent, only because, not because the accuracy, I could care less for the accuracy increase, but the critical hit damage increase by 70% can do a lot on certain builds because of how the damage formula works. So keep that in the game, I guess. I don't know, maybe just buff it. I feel like it's okay. And then while everyone knows this one's good, so I won't even talk. And then the rest are just so terrible. Like, while barrier is deployed, instantly start recharging your shield. That's only when you first take out your barrier, and most of the time when you're playing Zane, your barrier is out there for so long that you're only gonna proc this maybe like every 5 minutes. It's just so terrible. It should maybe be like when barrier is deployed, constantly recharge, or while barrier. It should be while barrier is deployed, constantly recharge your shields at the very least, but that's just trash. While Digiclone is active, regenerate 3% max health. That's so trash because he has the best and easiest lifesteal in the game to get on any build, so that's absolute trash. While Sentinel's active, fire rate is decreased, just 9%, so bad. While Sentinel's active, move speed is increased by 50%, that's really bad. And the next 2 I feel like are okay, I guess. After swapping places with your Digiclone, your gun is reloaded. That's cool, I guess. I don't know, keep it in the game for niche uses, but most of the time people don't use that. And while Digiclone active, regenerate 12% magazine ammo per second. Maybe buff that and people can actually use it in the Zane build, but most of the time people aren't going to use that anointment compared to other much better anointments in the game. It's just so stupid. And then we go to Moze. Moze has so many anointments that are actually good, but then you get to these certain anointments that can just be grouped together. And I'll talk more about that as we go down the list, but first, while entering exit Iron Bear, create a Nova, not constantly trigger a Nova. Once again, Nova's anointments are trash. Big surprise. After exiting Iron Bear, the next 2 magazines will have 10% increased fire and 20% critical damage. This is so bad if you consider the sister to this being after exiting Iron Bear. Next 2 magazines will have increased damage, which is like one of the best anointments that Moze has, arguably, in infinite ammo builds. It blows my mind that this anointment is in the same game as an anointment that is so freaking powerful. Like, there's no reason to have the increased fire rate and critical damage when you can just increase your damage by 120% more with fire, which is one of the best elements in the game. Next one I want to talk about is while Auto Bear is active, deal 130% incendiary damage. I feel like that's good. Most cases you want to be using a different anointment. I feel like it could be useful if they were to buff the damage, but it's not very good besides that. And next 4 and then the 6th one here. I'm not sure why they categorize like that, but Iron Bear is active. Each type of gun increased by 2 times. It should just be Iron Bear's active, increase Iron Bear's damage by 2 times, and just make it over with. There's no reason to have 4 different anointments for each type of gun. It's kind of ridiculous. It should just, I don't feel like it should be removed. I feel like it should just be grouped together. And then there's only just 2 more anointments I feel like they're really terrible, which is action skill and next 3 magazines have 33% increased reload and 67% increased handling. I like that it has more than just 2 magazines, but there's no reason why you would run that as opposed to any other anointment. It's just so bad. And then while Iron Bear is active, constantly regenerate 8% of magazine size. Her action skill tree does this job 100% better than this one anointment. I feel like it needs to be removed because we have plenty of magazine size in Moze. At least, if they don't want to remove it, at least increase it to an insane amount where like maybe you don't have to use the action skill tree to get your required magazine size. You know, actually that sounds like a pretty terrible idea. Just remove it. I'm just gonna real quick briefly go over some of the generic universal anointments that every character can get. That should just be removed from the game really quickly, and it won't be a surprise to anybody, hopefully. Once again, action skills active, constant trigger novas. Get rid of that. While action skills active, deal 75% more damage. That's cool. It should be buffed because we already have a generic thing that does better than that. We have action skill end, status effect damage, and get rid of that. No one likes status effect increases, or at least if you do, it's not good. Sorry about that. Action skill end, deal 105% more weapon damage to named enemies, badasses, and bosses. Remove it or buff it. Once again, just no reason to have it in the game when we have generic multipliers that do better. Elemental crit hits can cause status effects of that element to explode. I love the idea. It's just so bad. There's no reason to have it. Killing enemy grants 5% weapon damage and reload speed. Terrible. It only stacks, I believe, 5 or 10, and even if it were to stack to 100, you'd have to kill a ton of enemies to even get better than a lot of other anointments. That should just be buffed or removed. While enemies are below 25% health, increase weapon damage 5, only 50%. So terrible. There's most of the time enemies don't stay below 25% health that long for this to even be useful in most cases. And then regenerate 5% max HP per second for action skill end. That's terrible when there's also action skill end gain 15% lifesteal for a short time in the same game. There's no reason why you would just not use the lifesteal anointment. Damage taken, action skill end damage taken is reduced by 13%. That's just so bad. And the final thing that is just icing on the cake, if you think about the worst anointments in the game, this anointment doesn't increase your damage. It doesn't do really anything for you. I just can't think why they would add this to the game, like maybe with certain guns, but this final anointment, while action skill is active, projectile speed is increased by 2 times. Why? It's so dumb that they have that anointment in the game. I mean, like, I don't know, it's like, why? I get it in certain guns, maybe, but like, oh my god, it's so bad. And if you made it to the end, thank you very much. I know that this is a very peculiar type of video that I normally wouldn't do, but I've been brainstorming on this for a long time, and people have been talking about reducing the anointment pool in the community for a long time, and I just feel like I'll need to put some justice on the amount of anointments that should be removed from the game. If you take all the anointments that can be removed that I think I said about 20 or 30 different anointments that can be removed from the game. If we remove that many, the crazy reroll machine will give your desired anointment so much easier and without as many problems as it does currently, and I feel like it just definitely needs to be done. If Gearbox is listening, hopefully they are. I doubt it, but please just remove those anointments, or heck, I want to hear what you guys think about this. Tell me if you feel like these anointments should be removed, or if there's some anointments that I missed. But nevertheless, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I hope y'all have a great day. Bye-bye.
And the last shall be first to immerse in a pass out heat, facing him up with a moxie melt till he woke up drowning in tchotchke hell. More in a cave with a torch on a wall than a window arrangement of porcelain dolls.